The desert winds of Vexus 9 howled like forgotten gods across the cracked obsidian plains, scouring the ruins of the old imperial citadel with dust that glittered like ground glass under the twin suns. Inside the heart of what remained of the royal palace, a soaring, spiraling structure of fused crystal and biometal that pulsed faintly with the planet's dying energy. Captain Joran Vey stood frozen, his combat boots sinking slightly into the warm, humming floor tiles. He was a man out of place in every way. His Earth-issue armor, scuffed and dented from 3 months of trench warfare against the Vexian drones, looked absurd against the palace's living architecture, where walls shifted color with the mood of the air and chandeliers of floating light orbs drifted lazily like jellyfish in a silent sea. Before him, draped in robes woven from threads of liquid silver and threaded with strands of her own crimson hair, stood Princess Lyra of the Vexian crown. She was tall, nearly a head taller than him, her skin a luminous, pale violet that shimmered as if lit from within, her hair a cascade of fiery red, not like flame, but like molten copper caught mid-swing, falling past her waist in wild, unbound waves. Her eyes, large and almond-shaped, held no pupils, only swirling galaxies of deep indigo and gold, and right now, they were fixed on him with an intensity that made his breath catch. "You have eyes," she said, her voice a low, melodic hum that vibrated in his ribs like a plucked string. "So gorgeous, human man soldier." She stepped forward, barefoot, her toes curling slightly against the warm tile as if savoring the texture, and Joran's hand twitched toward his sidearm, then stopped. He'd learned, after nearly being disintegrated by a misplaced reflex 3 weeks prior, that in this palace weapons were as out of place as he was. The Vexians didn't fight with guns. They fought with emotion, with memory, with the very resonance of their thoughts. "I have something more pretty," she continued, tilting her head, her hair shifting like a living thing. "You want to see it?" He froze. Not because she was beautiful, though she was terrifyingly so, like a storm given form, but because the words weren't just spoken. They were felt. A warmth bloomed in his chest, sudden and bright, like sunlight breaking through a storm cloud after weeks of rain. It wasn't telepathy, not exactly. The Vexians didn't speak in minds. They spoke in emotions, projecting them outward like scent or sound. And when Lyra said those words, she didn't just say them. She offered him the memory of her first sunrise, the scent of blooming sand lilies after a rainstorm that hadn't come in 100 years, the quiet joy of watching her younger brother chase bioluminescent moths through the dunes. It was overwhelming. It was beautiful. And it was terrifying, because he didn't know how to respond to a gift he couldn't hold. He swallowed hard, his throat dry from dust and adrenaline. I don't know what you mean," he managed, his voice rough, unpolished, too human. She smiled. It wasn't a polite smile. It was the kind that cracked open something deep inside a person, the kind that made you feel seen in ways you'd forgotten how to be. "You think beauty is only skin," she said, stepping closer. The scent of ozone and crushed moon blossoms clung to her. "You think because your kind has red blood and brown eyes and clumsy hands, you are less. But you carry something no Vexian can replicate." She reached out, not to touch him, but to hover her fingers a breath away from his cheek. "You carry sorrow that still chooses to laugh. You carry fear that still walks into battle. You carry loss, and still you remember." Joran's vision blurred. He thought of his little sister, Lena, back on Earth, her face glowing in the flickering light of a dying tablet as she told him she was going to be a painter. He thought of the last message she sent, just hours before the asteroid strike that wiped out the eastern grid. "Don't forget to eat real food, Jor. Don't become a robot." He thought of the 5 men from his squad who never came back from the salt flats of Carvex, their names etched into the side of his helmet, worn smooth by time and grit. He hadn't cried since he was 12. Not once. And now, standing in the heart of an alien palace, under the gaze of a princess who could read his soul like a poem, he felt the weight of it all, the grief, the guilt, the quiet, stubborn hope, rise in his throat like a tide. Lyra's fingers brushed his cheek, and he wept, not loudly, not dramatically, just a single tear, hot and sudden, tracing a path through the grime on his skin. She didn't flinch, didn't recoil. She leaned in, her forehead gently touching his, and for the first time since he'd been dragged into this war, Joran Vey didn't feel like a soldier. He felt like a man. "I see it," she whispered, her voice now a sigh that carried the weight of centuries. "I see your beauty." The palace around them shimmered. The walls, once cold and distant, now glowed a soft, golden amber. The floating orbs above them pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. A low, harmonic hum filled the air. Not music, not language, but something deeper, a resonance, a recognition. It was then that the alarms began to scream. Not the shrill, mechanical wail of human war sirens. This was different. A deep, resonant thrumming that shook the very bones of the palace. A sound like a dying star's last breath. The crimson threads in Lyra's hair flared violently, turning nearly white at the tips. Her eyes, once swirling galaxies, sharpened into razor-edged stars. "They've breached the outer veil," she said, pulling back, her voice now sharp with command. "The Hollow Ones." Joran's training kicked in. Instinct, discipline. The soldier returned, cold and sharp. "Hollow Ones? Vexians who rejected the crown," she said, already moving, her robes swirling behind her like smoke. "They stole the Heartstone. They plan to drain the planet's resonance. If they succeed, Vexus 9 will die. And with it, every memory, every song, every emotion ever felt here." She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "You are the only human who has ever touched me without fear. And now, you are the only one who can help me stop them." He stared. "Me? I'm a grunt. I don't know your tech. I don't know your magic." "You know this," she said, pressing her palm flat against his chest, over his heart. "You know how to hold something broken and still believe it can be whole." Before he could respond, the floor beneath them cracked open. A tunnel of swirling violet light erupted upward, and from it poured figures, tall, gaunt, their skin gray and cracked like dried riverbeds, their eyes hollow pits that flickered with stolen light. They wore armor forged from the bones of fallen Vexians, and their movements were jerky, unnatural, as if their bodies were puppets controlled by something ancient and hungry. The Hollow Ones. Lyra didn't scream, didn't beg. She raised her hands, and the air around her ignited with crimson energy, forming a shield that slammed into the lead Hollow One, sending it skidding back with a shriek that sounded like 1,000 broken violins. Joran didn't think. He drew his plasma pistol, his last round, and fired. The blast seared through the chest of another, but it didn't die. It reformed, its body knitting back together with tendrils of shadow, its hollow eyes locking onto him. "They don't die," Lyra gasped, dodging a whip of dark energy that cracked the ceiling above them. "They absorb. They steal emotion. The more they take, the stronger they become." Joran fired again, and again. Each shot slowed them but didn't stop them. One lunged, its clawed hand reaching for Lyra's throat. He didn't hesitate. He tackled her sideways, rolling hard as the claw sliced through the air where her neck had been. They crashed into a wall of glowing vines that immediately began to heal the impact, wrapping around them in soft, glowing tendrils. "You're going to get yourself killed," she hissed, her breath hot against his ear. "I'm used to it," he grunted, pushing himself up, scanning the chamber. There were 3 exits, all blocked by Hollow Ones. The Heartstone's energy was fading. The palace groaned like a dying animal. Then he saw it. On the far wall, embedded in the crystal like a heart in a chest, pulsed the Heartstone, a sphere of liquid light, swirling with colors no human eye had ever named. It was beautiful, and it was dying. Lyra followed his gaze. "If they reach it, they'll turn every living memory on Vexus 9 into silence." Joran looked at her crimson hair, her violet skin, her galaxy eyes that had seen 1,000 sunrises and now looked at him like he was the only thing worth saving. He thought of Lena's last message. He thought of the silence that had settled over his own heart since the war began. "Then we don't let them get close," he said. She blinked. "What?" "I've got an idea," he said, and before she could react, he grabbed her hand and ran, not toward the Heartstone, not away from it, into the heart of the Hollow Ones. They were clustered now, drawn to the fading energy like moths to a dying flame. Joran didn't slow. He didn't aim. He just ran, dragging Lyra with him, straight into the center of the group. The Hollow Ones turned as one, their hollow eyes widening, not with fear, but with curiosity, something they hadn't felt in centuries. "Joran," Lyra began. "Trust me," he said, and then he did the most human thing he'd ever done. He laughed, not a nervous chuckle, not a soldier's grim grin, a full, deep, belly laugh, raw, unfiltered, messy, and utterly ridiculous. He laughed until his ribs ached, until tears streamed down his face again, until he was bent over, gasping, holding onto Lyra for balance, his voice echoing through the chamber like a bell. The hollow ones froze. One of them tilted its head. A faint, almost imperceptible tremor passed through its body. Lyra stared at him. Then, slowly, impossibly, she smiled. And then she laughed. Not the melodic, controlled laugh of a princess. The wild, unguarded laugh of someone who had forgotten how to be free. It burst from her like a supernova, bright and loud and utterly, gloriously human. The effect was instantaneous. The hollow ones staggered. Their forms flickered. The shadows in their eyes dimmed. One of them reached up, trembling, and touched its own chest. Then another. Then another. The air around them shimmered, not with stolen energy, but with something new, something warm, something alive. You made them feel, Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. They stole memories, Joran wheezed, still laughing, his chest burning. But they forgot how to feel their own. So I gave them something better. He looked at her. A laugh. A stupid, messy, human laugh. She stared at him, her galaxy eyes wide, glowing brighter than ever. Then, without warning, she kissed him. It wasn't romantic. Not in the way humans imagined. It was deeper. It was a transfer. A merging. A flood of everything she had ever been. Her childhood in the Whispering Dunes, her grief over her mother's death, her loneliness as a princess who could feel the pain of every citizen but could never fix it, her quiet hope that one day, someone would see her not as royalty, but as a girl who loved the taste of desert rain. And he gave her back everything he carried. The weight of his sister's absence, the guilt of surviving when others didn't, the stubborn, ridiculous belief that even in a broken galaxy, laughter still mattered. The Heartstone flared, not with power, not with rage, with joy. The crystal pulsed once, twice, then exploded outward in a wave of golden light. Not destructive, not violent, but healing. It washed over the hollow ones, dissolving the shadows from their skin, knitting their bones back into flesh, filling their hollow eyes with color. One by one, they collapsed to their knees, weeping. Not tears of sorrow, but of remembrance, of belonging. The palace sang. The walls bloomed with flowers made of light. The ceiling opened, revealing the twin suns of Vexus 9, now shining through a sky streaked with auroras of violet and gold. The wind outside ceased its howling. For the first time in a century, the desert was silent, not empty, but peaceful. Lyra pulled back slowly, her forehead still pressed to his. Her hair had turned a soft, shimmering silver at the tips, like dawn breaking over snow. You gave them back their souls, she whispered. Joran wiped his face, smearing dust and tears. Nah, you gave them back their hearts. I just reminded them how to laugh. She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time he saw not a princess, not a warrior, not a being of alien grace, but a woman. A woman who had spent her life carrying the weight of a dying world, and who had just found, in a clumsy, laughing human soldier, the reason to keep carrying it. I don't know how to say this in your language, she said softly. Then don't, he replied. She smiled. I love you. He didn't say it back. Not yet, but he took her hand. And together, they walked out of the palace, past the hollow ones, who now knelt, heads bowed, weeping softly, their skin glowing with new color, and into the desert, where the sands sparkled under the twin suns, and the first real rain in 100 years began to fall. It wasn't water. It was liquid light, and it tasted like home. The days that followed were strange, beautiful, and utterly human. Joran didn't return to Earth. No one from command ever came to retrieve him. He'd been listed as MIA, then Kia, then forgotten. He didn't care. He stayed. He learned. He ate meals with Lyra on the palace's highest balcony, where the wind carried the scent of newly blooming sand lilies and the distant laughter of children, hollow ones now reborn, playing tag with glowing moths. He learned to speak Vexian, not through translation implants, but by listening to the way she said, sunrise like a prayer, and love like a promise. Lyra, once bound by protocol and duty, began to change. She shed her royal robes for simple tunics woven from desert silk. She climbed the dunes at dawn, barefoot, and taught Joran how to find water in the sand by listening to the wind's song. She laughed more. She cried more. She danced wild, uncoordinated dances that made her hair fly like a comet. And he laughed until he fell over. One night, under a sky thick with stars that hadn't been visible for centuries, she took his hand and led him to the edge of the great chasm, where the Heartstone's energy still pulsed, now stronger than ever, a slow, steady heartbeat beneath the planet's surface. "I have a gift for you," she said. He looked at her. "You already gave me everything." She shook her head. "Not yet." She reached into the folds of her tunic and pulled out a small object. A single strand of her hair, now glowing faintly silver, woven into a delicate band. "This is my resonance thread. It holds my essence, my memories, my love. If you wear it, you will never be alone. Not in silence, not in fear, not even when I am far from you." He took it. It was warm, alive. "I don't know how to wear it," he admitted. She smiled. "Then let me teach you." She knelt before him, her hair cascading around them like a curtain of fire and starlight. She took the thread and gently tied it around his wrist, just above the scar from his first battle wound. The moment it settled, warmth spread through his arm, up his shoulder, into his chest. He felt her presence, not as a voice, but as a feeling. The echo of her laughter, the warmth of her touch, the quiet certainty that she was with him always. "You're not just wearing my hair," she whispered. "You're wearing my heart." He didn't say it then, not with words, but he pulled her close, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "I'm not letting you go." Months passed. The planet healed. The hollow ones became citizens. Children were born. Some with violet skin, some with crimson hair, some with eyes that shimmered like Joran's own. The palace became a sanctuary, not a throne room. Lyra was still called princess, but she refused to sit on the crystal throne. Instead, she sat on the ground, teaching children how to find joy in silence, how to listen to the wind, how to laugh when the sky turned red. Joran became something new, not a soldier, not a human, a bridge. He taught Vexians how to tell stories. Real ones, messy ones, ones with bad endings and happy surprises. He taught them how to sing off-key, how to burn toast and still smile, how to hold someone when they cried, even if you didn't understand why. And Lyra taught him how to feel, not just the big things, the love, the joy, the awe, but the small ones too. The way the dust settled on his boots after a long walk. The way the morning light turned her hair into liquid flame. The way her breath hitched when she saw a shooting star. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon and the first stars blinked awake, they sat together on the edge of the chasm, wrapped in a blanket woven from desert silk and starlight threads. "I want to marry you," Joran said out of nowhere. Lyra didn't react. Not right away. She just stared at the stars. Then, slowly, she turned to him. "I've waited 1,000 years, she said. "For someone to say that without fear." He smiled. "I'm still scared." "Good," she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Then you'll never stop trying." He turned to her, his hand finding hers. "Will you marry me?" She closed her eyes. "I already did. The moment you laughed in the dark." He kissed her then, not because it was expected, but because he couldn't not. And when they pulled apart, the sky above them shimmered with a new constellation. One shaped like two hands clasped, one human, one Vexian, forever intertwined. Years later, the palace was no longer a ruin. It was a home. A village grew around it, small, bright, alive. Homes carved from living crystal. Gardens that bloomed in colors no earth botanist could name. Children with silver hair and violet skin ran through the streets, laughing, chasing glowing beetles, shouting in a language that was half Vexian, half English, full of joy. Joran and Lyra lived in a tower at the edge of the palace, where the wind carried the scent of moon blossoms and the sound of their children's voices. They had 7, each one unique. The eldest, Kira, had Lyra's crimson hair and Joran's stubborn grin. She could make flowers bloom just by humming. The second, Torin, had Joran's dark eyes and Lyra's ability to sense emotion. He could tell when someone was lying just by how the air around them shifted. The third, Vera, was born with skin that changed color with her mood. When she was happy, she glowed gold. When she was sad, she turned deep violet. She was also terrifyingly good at stealing snacks. The fourth, Dax, could speak to the desert winds. He claimed the sand whispered secrets to him. The fifth, Lena, named after Joran's sister, could heal wounds with her touch. She never used it on herself. The sixth, Zora, was born during a solar storm. She had eyes that flickered like lightning, and she could make music from silence. And the seventh, little Mira, was born on the day the Heartstone pulsed brighter than ever before. She had skin like moonlight and hair like a nebula. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. But when she smiled, the whole planet seemed to sigh. They lived, they loved, they laughed. And every night, before the stars blinked out, Joran would sit beside Lyra on their balcony, her head on his shoulder, her hand in his, their children asleep in the rooms below, their laughter still echoing in the halls. And sometimes, when the wind was just right, and the twin suns painted the sky in shades of rose and gold, Lyra would whisper, "Do you remember the first time you laughed in the palace?" And he would smile and say, "I'll never forget it." And she would kiss his cheek and say, "Good, because I won't either." And the stars above would shimmer, as if remembering too. And the desert, for the first time in 1,000 years, slept peacefully. Not because it was safe, but because it was loved. And that, in the end, was the most powerful magic of all. Peace, Joran learned, was not the absence of war, but its quiet aftermath, still trembling in the bones. For 3 years, Vexus 9 flourished beneath twin suns, nourished by the Heartstone's pulse and the laughter of children who had never known silence. The palace, once a relic of isolation, pulsed with life. Kitchens steamed with stew made from earth potatoes and Vexian sunroot. Classrooms echoed with both English and the melodic tongue of resonance. And at dusk, Joran and Lyra would walk the dunes hand in hand, their shadows merging into one under the violet sky. But galaxies have long memories, and Earth never forgets its soldiers. It began with a flicker in the desert horizon, a distortion, not of heat, but of space itself. The sky above the chasm tore open like fabric, and from it descended not hollow ones, not Vexian rebels, but sleek, gunmetal-gray ships bearing the insignia of the Terran Dominion, the same emblem once stitched onto Joran's uniform. He saw them first from the balcony tower, his hand instinctively going to the wrist where Lyra's resonance thread still glowed faintly beneath his skin. His breath caught, not fear, not yet, but the cold, coiled tension of a man who knew what those ships meant. They came not for peace. They came for the Heartstone. Admiral Calix Rourke, a man with eyes like fractured ice and a voice that had once barked orders over Joran's rookie drills, stepped onto the palace's crystal ramp wearing full ceremonial armor. His entourage carried pulse rifles, neural disruptors, and, worst of all, the kind of quiet confidence that meant they believed they already owned everything they saw. "Captain Vey," Calix said, not saluting, not smiling, "you're alive, and you've gone native." Joran stood straighter, but didn't reach for a weapon he no longer wore. "I'm not a soldier anymore, Admiral." "You're Terran," Calix shot back, "and that makes you subject to recall, especially when you're hoarding alien tech that could win us the Outer Rim War." "The Heartstone isn't tech," Lyra said, stepping from the shadows behind Joran, her crimson hair braided with desert flowers, her violet skin luminous even in daylight. "It is the soul of this world." Calix barely glanced at her. "Sentient rock, pretty, but useless in a fight unless it can kill 10,000 Krellians before breakfast." "It doesn't kill," Joran said, stepping between them. "It heals. It remembers. It connects." Calix smirked. "Then it's a liability. Emotion is weakness, Vey. You taught your kids to feel. We teach ours to win." Before Joran could respond, the Admiral raised a hand. From the ships overhead, drones descended, hundreds of them, humming with sonic disruptors designed to shatter resonant frequencies. The very air grew brittle. Flowers on the balcony withered in seconds. One of their children, Lena, clutched her chest and gasped, her healing glow flickering out like a snuffed candle. Lyra screamed, not in rage, but in pain. The Heartstone's pulse stuttered across the planet. The sky darkened. "They're poisoning the resonance," she whispered, falling to her knees. Joran's blood went cold. He knew that look, the same hollow-eyed despair he'd seen in refugees on Earth's last colonies. This wasn't just theft. This was erasure. That night, as Dominion engineers began drilling into the outer layers of the Heartstone chamber, Joran sat with his family in their tower. The children were silent, their faces pale with a fear they didn't understand. Kira clutched a wilting moonblossom, her crimson hair dull. Torrens stared at the sky, tears tracking silently down his cheeks. "What do we do, Papa?" Vera asked, her skin now a deep, troubled indigo. Joran looked at Lyra. She met his gaze, her eyes no longer galaxies, but storms. "We fight," she said, "but not with guns. Not with ships. With memory." Lyra revealed a secret even Joran didn't know. The Heartstone wasn't just a power source. It was a library, a living archive of every soul who had ever loved, lost, laughed, or wept on Vexus 9. and it could broadcast those memories not as images but as experiences, as truth. But to activate its full resonance, someone had to anchor it. Someone whose heart carried both worlds. You, she said, taking his hands, you are the bridge, Joran. You carry Earth's sorrow and Vexus Nine's hope in equal measure. Only you can awaken the stone without breaking it. He wanted to refuse. He was just a man, a father, a husband, a teacher, not a savior. But then he looked at Lena, her small hands trembling as she tried to revive a dead firefly. And he remembered his sister's voice. Don't become a robot. No, he said. Not this time. The plan was madness. While Dominion forces fortified their perimeter, Joran, Lyra, and their children crept through the ancient maintenance tunnels of the palace. Passages built by the first singers, forgotten even by modern Vexians. The air hummed with residual energy, the walls breathing like lungs. Dax guided them, whispering to the currents. The stone dreams, he said. It's scared, but it remembers you. They reached the core chamber just as Calix's engineers began the final extraction sequence. The Heartstone pulsed erratically, its light dimming. Around it, Dominion drones hovered, their fields creating a sonic cage that muted all emotion, all memory. Joran stepped forward. Lyra tied her resonance thread around his chest this time, over his heart, braiding it with strands of her hair and dust from Earth he'd kept in a pouch for years. Give them what they can't destroy, she whispered. He placed his hands on the Heartstone and opened his heart, not just his memories, but all of them. Lena's laugh as she painted her first sunrise. Kira's wonder at seeing rain for the first time. Torrent's quiet comfort when Mira was born. His first kiss with Lyra in the dying light of a broken palace. His sister's last message. His squadmates' names. The taste of earth rain. The smell of Vexian bread fresh from the oven. He gave them everything. The Heartstone exploded not with force, but with feeling. A wave of pure resonance erupted outward, silent and invisible, yet devastating to those who had forgotten how to feel. Dominion soldiers dropped their weapons, clutching their heads as forgotten memories flooded them. Birthdays missed, mothers' voices, first kisses, childhood fears. Some wept, some screamed, some simply collapsed, overwhelmed by the weight of being human again. Calix stood rigid, his face contorted in fury. Shut it down, he roared. Fry the core. But it was too late. The sky cracked open, not with ships but with light. The memories of Vexus, 9 poured into the atmosphere, visible now as shimmering auroras of emotion. Joy as golden rivers, sorrow as deep blue tides, love as swirling silver nebulae. The planet sang, and the song was so beautiful, so raw, that even the drones faltered. Then something unexpected. One of the Dominion soldiers, a young recruit no older than Joran had been when he first shipped out, stepped forward. He removed his helmet. Tears streaked his face. I forgot, he whispered. I forgot what my sister's voice sounded like. He turned to Calix. We can't do this, sir. Calix raised his sidearm. Joran moved, not with speed but with purpose. He didn't fight. He spoke. I knew you once, he said, standing between Calix and the boy. You gave me my first field medal. Said I had heart. Calix's hand trembled. War changes people. So does love, Joran replied. And you've got a daughter, don't you? On Titan Colony? You send her star charts every month. You think she doesn't know you're gone. The Admiral froze, because Joran was right. And in that silence, Calix's armor, the emotional one, not the metal, cracked. He lowered the gun. I was ordered to retrieve the stone, he said, voice raw. They said it was a weapon. It's a mirror, Lyra said, stepping beside Joran. It shows you what you've lost, so you can choose to get it back. Calix looked at the auroras, at the crying soldiers, at the children watching from the balcony with wide, hopeful eyes. He looked at Joran, no longer a rogue soldier, but something more. A bridge, he murmured. Then he turned to his crew. Stand down, he ordered. All units. We are leaving. But the stone, an officer protested, is not ours to take, Calix said. And maybe it never was. The Dominion ships powered down. The drones deactivated. The sonic cage dissolved. And the Heartstone, as if sighing in relief, pulsed once. Bright, steady, strong. Victory, Joran thought, should feel like joy. But as the Dominion forces prepared to leave, a new signal blipped on the palace's ancient detection matrix. One Lyra had only ever seen in prophecy scrolls. A third fleet approached. Not Terran, not Vexian, Krellian, the Dominion's mortal enemies, and far more ruthless. Their warships were jagged obsidian blades, wreathed in black flame. Their comms crackled with a single message, broadcast in every known language. Surrender the Heartstone, or we turn your world into glass. Calix's face went pale. They followed us. They've been hunting the stone for centuries. They believe it can amplify psychic weaponry, turn entire planets into screaming weapons. Joran looked at Lyra. She was already moving, her crimson hair flaring with urgency. The Chamber of Echoes, she said. There's a way to hide the stone's signature, but it requires a sacrifice. What kind? Joran asked. A memory, she said softly. The strongest one, the one that binds you to this world. He didn't hesitate. Take it. No, she said, gripping his arms. Not mine to take, yours to give. He closed his eyes and chose. He gave up the memory of his sister's face. Not her voice, not her words, but the image. The exact curve of her smile, the freckles on her nose, the way her eyes crinkled when she laughed. It dissolved from his mind like sand through fingers, leaving only a hollow ache and the echo of love. The Heartstone dimmed instantly, its resonance folding inward like a closed flower. To the Krellians it would now appear dead, a fossil, not a power source. As the Obsidian fleet entered orbit, scanning, probing, they found nothing but a peaceful desert world. Confused, they lingered, then turned away, seeking their prize elsewhere. The cost was a silence in Joran's mind where Lena's face used to live. Lyra held him as he wept. Not for the war, not for the enemies, but for the loss of something small, something precious. I'm sorry, she whispered. He shook his head. She'll always be in my heart. Just not my eyes. And in that moment, little Mira, silent since birth, reached up with her nebula-bright eyes, touched his cheek, and projected an image. His sister's face, clear, whole, smiling. The memory hadn't been lost. It had been saved. Not by him, not by the stone, by love, by the child who carried both worlds in her soul. Now, as the twin suns rise once more over a planet that has known both ruin and rebirth, Joran stands on the dunes with Lyra, their children scattered like stars behind them. The palace hums with quiet power. The desert blooms. And somewhere in the sky, unseen but felt, the Dominion fleet carries a new message back to Earth. Not of conquest, but of wonder. And the Krellians? They'll return. War never truly ends. But neither does hope. For Joran Vey is no longer just a soldier, nor just a man. He is the keeper of memory, the father of bridges, the husband of a princess who taught him that beauty isn't in the eyes, but in what they choose to see. And when the next storm comes, as it always does, they will face it not with weapons, but with laughter, with tears, with the unbreakable thread that ties two worlds together. One heart at a time. The Krellians never returned. They sent no more ships, no more threats. Only a single silent probe that hovered above the palace for 3 days before dissolving into a shower of golden dust, leaving behind a single flower that bloomed with every color ever seen on Vexus 9. Joran planted it beside the Heartstone, where it grew into a tree whose leaves whispered lullabies at dusk. His children grew tall, their voices blending Earth's songs with Vexian harmonies, their laughter echoing through halls that once knew only silence. Lyra, no longer just a princess, became the first keeper of echoes, teaching all who would listen that the greatest power isn't in control, but in letting go. Calix stayed. He taught the children how to build rockets. Not for war, but for wonder, so they could one day visit Earth and say, "We remember you."